tutors, mentors, and the Citi with your host.com.
The Citi Tutors presents
Tutors, mentors, and the Citi
with your host.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kevin.com Brown, and welcome to Tutors, Mentors, and the Citi, brought to you by the Citi Tutors. And you know how I do. I just like to jump in, and I'm going to introduce our guest. So, without any further ado, please give a nice warm welcome to Miss Rashada Timkee. Yay!
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here, have the opportunity to speak with you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining me. So, my first question, Timkee, what kind of name is Timkee?
Well, it is my married name, and it actually comes from Trinidad. So my husband's grandfather was half Chinese. So it's typically spelled with TIM space KEE. But once they got to America, just to simplify things, they put it all together, Timkee. But yeah, it's from Trinidad.
Okay. Thank you for that. So, Rashada Timkee, who are you?
Who am I? That's such a good question. I am a Florida native, born and raised. That's number one, for better or for worse. I am a proud wife and mother, dance mom to be exact. I am a first generation college graduate and corporate professional, first generation corporate professional as well. And I am an individual who happens to make a living as a senior business risk officer in a financial organization. So that's who I am.
Okay, born and raised in Florida. Public school, private school, what was your upbringing like?
I am a product of public school. Yep, the public school system.
Growing up in the public school, what was that like in Florida? It's interesting. I had family in Florida. My mother used to pile me, my siblings, and my cousins into the car, and we'd all take a road trip from New York to Miami. Now, we were kids, and Florida was beautiful and sunny and a place you don't want to leave. Okay. And now, you get older and generations later and what have you, and Florida, is Florida. But growing up in Florida, what was that like for you?
I would say it was pretty uneventful. I think that's a really good way to describe it. I grew up in Central Florida, and I grew up in a small town in Central Florida. And so it is the town that I would say folks would migrate to raise a family. And I grew up in middle-class neighborhood, went to the school right up the street. Back in those days, growing up in the 90s, we were very self-sufficient. So me and my siblings walk ourselves to the bus stop. Nobody really had to follow up on our homework and stuff like that. I loved my elementary school. And now that I'm thinking back, it was pretty impressive that we did have a Black female principal for my school, Miss Underwood, who I, still am able to keep in touch with now and then. But I would say that I felt cared for. I still have fond memories of kindergarten, first grade. I was selected to be in a gifted program. So, I have no complaints with my public school education. So, yeah, it was good.
Absolutely. When you said you were selected to be in the gifted program, that was going to be my next question as to, were you identified as a whiz kid growing up? And apparently you were.
Yeah, I would say I was definitely a little bit more introverted growing up. And I was totally okay kind of spending time with myself. I read books a lot. I enjoyed solitude actually a lot as a kid, which thinking back, that was an interesting characteristic to have. But that is what I believe triggered them to evaluate me for the gifted program. I literally remember first grade, we were having recess and I was thinking, I'm going to go read this book in the corner. And I was like, I think my teacher would like if I read this book in the corner. And sure enough, she was so impressed that I was reading instead of playing. And it was, the rest was history. I remember taking the exam doing the evaluation. And then I would have like separate classes in the middle of the day with my gifted learning teacher. But yeah, it was cool.
Okay, so you finished public school, you finished high school. Where did you go to college?
I went to college, actually 30 minutes away from my hometown, so I didn't go far. A university of South Florida. So it's so interesting because as a first generation college student, I had no reference points. I had no blueprint or guidance, right? Navigating, a major life decision like college. So it was very much just going with the flow. I selected USF at the time because they didn't have like the most rigorous application process. So it wasn't that difficult to navigate. And then I literally only applied to one college because I was raised, since 11 by a single mother. And I didn't want to keep asking her for college application fees. And so the one fee was enough. And I just had to hope that I would get in. So I went to USF. It was far enough away that I could go off to college, but close enough that I could go home if I needed to. So,
Okay, so you stayed in the dorms.
Yes, I did. Yep. My first dorm was, it was what you imagine. Like if you see School Days, like I remember watching School Days and seeing those dorms, right? Like that's how my dorm was, no bells and whistles. And it was all girls dorm actually. So very humbling, I would say.
Okay. And what was your major?
My major was finance. When I got to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do or what I wanted to pursue. I just knew that success for me looked like businessmen and women who wore suits and worked on Wall Street. And so I originally selected a business administration major, but my advisor at the time encouraged me to select something a little more targeted or specific. And it was between finance and accounting for me, and accounting was a little bit more involved. And so I chose finance. So, yeah.
Okay, you said single mom. Where was your mom from?
She's from Lakeland, too. So we grew up in Lakeland. Stayed in Lakeland, raised her children in Lakeland, and same for my grandparents. So yeah.
So Lakeland is Florida. Lakeland, Florida.
Yep.
Okay, because you said a small town, but you never said the name of the.
I didn't, and I'd have messed around and it's okay.
Okay. So any siblings?
Yes, I have 3 siblings. I have an older brother who's 3 years older than me, a sister who's 2 years older, and then a brother who's 2 years younger. So I'm a middle child.
Little child. Okay, what was that like?
I would describe it as uneventful again, because I would say I was able to learn, even just from observation from my older siblings. And then I was such a tomboy. So me and my brother were like super close. My little brother, super close. And I don't know. I kind of was the kind of like the self-sufficient kid, the independent kid too. And so they never really had to worry about me as far as grades, kind of like doing my chores. I just kind of stayed out the way. So yeah.
Okay. Did all your siblings go to college, or did some make different pivots?
Yeah, literally the only one who went to college.
Really?
The rest of my siblings are, just making a living, doing, whatever aligns with them. But yeah, I'm the only one that actually went to college.
Okay, so you go to college, major in finance, you graduate, and do what?
I graduated, and just before graduation, I was offered a role in a management associate program with a local regional bank down here in Florida. And so this organization, this financial organization, they mainly service the Southeast region. And so at the time, I can't say that when I interviewed for the role that this was my quote unquote dream job, but I also was graduating on the tail end of the recession, and a lot of my friends weren't getting job offers at all. And so who was I to turn down one? And so I was just grateful. And so it was taking me to Birmingham, Alabama, where they were headquartered, to spend 2 months going through a rotation, learning the lines of business within the bank, and also getting acclimated to the corporate world. Like they had us taking classes for etiquette. They had us doing volunteer stuff together, a lot of team building. And so it was like almost an extension of college, but really an introduction to the adult world. And I was with a cohort as well. So it was nice to not have to do it by myself.
Right. Okay. Classes on etiquette. That's nice. What was Birmingham, Alabama like back then?
It actually was a pleasant surprise. I was a little like leery. I was like, Birmingham, what in the world? Now, mind you, I'm from Central Florida, so I have no reason to kind of like judge any other Southern states, but I did have my, some preconceived notions about what Birmingham would be like. And it was just completely beautiful town, great people, the Southern hospitality for sure. And I think one thing that I anticipated was like that there would be nothing to do. And I was like already like prepared, like, okay, Atlanta's 2 hours away. I can just go there on the weekends. But like I literally only went maybe once or twice. With my cohort there, we found stuff to do. And outside of that, it really is just a beautiful, beautiful city. Coming from Florida, it's just flat, no topography. So to see those rolling hills and stuff, it was really beautiful. So I like that.
And how long did you stay out there in that program?
Only 2 months.
Okay.
Only 2 months. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you finished the program and it
Mm-hmm.
prepared you for the position that you were offered, and that took you back to Florida.
Yes. Yeah. So it took me back to Tampa, Florida, which is, the town that I did my college in, right? Went to college in Tampa, went off to Birmingham for 2 months, came back to Tampa to start making my adult living. And so I essentially was being trained and groomed for an assistant branch manager role within one of our banking centers. And what I really appreciated about my experience at this particular bank is that they really allowed me to kind of get experience in each of the roles that I would eventually be managing. And so it really helped me to not only talk the talk, but be able to walk the walk, because I've literally, experienced all the things that you all are doing. I can relate to it on a different level. And I can support, a little bit better too, because I experienced it as well. And so I also had the pleasure of working with a lot of great leaders, one of whom I would say kind of became like a work aunt to me. She was my manager and one of the first Black women that I've ever worked for. And so definitely a lot of fond memories in that role.
Okay. So you are being groomed to achieve and excel at this corporation. Okay. When did you find time? You mentioned marriage and you mentioned kids, but you sound focused on your career. When did you find time to find that love life?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I wasn't necessarily looking for it, I will say that. It definitely happened when it was time to happen. So if we take a step back, in college, I was in a business fraternity, Delta Sigma Pi. And within my business fraternity, I had line brothers. They call them line brothers, but they were men and women. And one of them, we were literally just platonic friends, but was really good people. Didn't know later on that he would become my husband, but I just remember thinking he's really good people. He's so humble, well dressed too, and not in a tacky way, just a very like low key. I can tell he likes fine things, but he doesn't need you to know. And so he actually helped me get one of my internships that I believe helped me get my offer out of college. And so years passed, and we always keep in touch with, our line brothers, but we kept in touch and went out to dinner. And it kind of, I guess, like, looking at each other a little different years later, and like the rest was history. So yeah, we started dating, and he was very, upfront about what his intentions were. Like, he was courting me. He actually, I remember a text message where he was basically like letting me know, like, I'm interested in more than just friendship. And if you're not, I completely respect that. We can remain friends. But if you are, like, this should be a thing. And so I could do nothing but respect that. Like, he came correct. And so, yeah, I mean, we eventually got engaged. We actually had my daughter before we got married. And then 3 years after my daughter was born, we got married. So it was, I think out of my friends, I was not one that was really checking for like marriage and stuff like that. I was the kind of career driven one, and probably the last one that my friends would say would be married. And I ended up being the first one that got married. But it's funny because when our daughter came, still very much, thinking to myself, well, I don't want you to marry me just because we have a kid together. Like, I want you to marry me because you want to marry me. So, he's ready to make me an honest woman. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. We can get married when we're ready. And so, and so we did. We did it our way, and we did it when we were ready. So yeah.
You are funny. You are hilarious. So he's courting you, and you're like, no, I'm gonna go in the corner and read like I've been doing since I'm a little girl. No, that's good. He slipped up on you just the right way. Sound like he made all the right moves. Tell him big ups. Tell him I like him already. Tell him I like his style.
And he's from Brooklyn too, obviously by way of Trinidad, but he was raised in Canarsie. So
Oh, really?
anything to do with
I went to high school in Brooklyn, so I can relate. And it's funny. I'm a Yankee. They used the West Indian people used to call me Yankee boy, right? Growing up. So decades later, a few years ago, my father passed away, but he was, we had a great run. He was 89 years old. He was, so we had a real great long relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the funeral and I find out that I'm part Jamaican.
Oh.
And I'm like, I gotta apologize to all the Jamaican people, the West Indian people that I've teased.
Oh my word.
Thinking I'm a Yankee boy, and why y'all talk funny and y'all eat goat and what the heck is going? And come to find out, I got Jamaican cousins, and I got
all this time. Yeah, and missing out on good food while you're making fun of it.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! So yeah. So that was cultural for me, but I can definitely relate. So big ups to him. Tell him I like him already. Yeah. I like his style. All right. So he went to the same college as you?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that was after college. Y'all kept in touch.
Mm-hmm.
Was he still in Florida?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So you guys kept in touch. You stayed in Florida, built a happy life. Now, Citi Tutors, we do tutoring, we do mentorship. You sounded brilliant all your life. So you probably never needed a tutor, right? You sound like the kid who, the kids that needed help would say, hey, call Rashada, see if she could tutor you. You sound like you might have been a tutor as opposed to needing a tutor.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of the curriculum, particularly, within my public school career, through high school, came almost intuitively. Like, I'm just, I would say, a naturally curious person. And so it was just intriguing to me naturally. And so I performed well. I would say, though, in college, let me tell you, I definitely had some humbling moments because I'm thinking, well, you're a honor society student. You've been able to do this, just off the strength of understanding the content and the concepts. And I didn't really have to study in high school, but that meant in college when I got into, more intense curriculum, I didn't know how to study. I kind of assumed that I was going to just naturally get it through osmosis like I did in high school. And I was absolutely wrong. Now, couple that with the fact that once I got to college, a lot more freedom, and I wanted to be on every scene. So I wasn't necessarily prioritizing my studies. Um, by the end of my freshman year, I was on academic probation and I was
Really?
about to lose my scholarship. And so
Mm.
that was absolutely a wake up moment for me. I had to write an appeal letter to keep my scholarship. And that sat me down for sure. It made me mindful of the circles I kept, as well as how I prioritize my time. That's when time management became real. I had a part-time job all throughout college, but I really had to carve out time to be in the library and surround myself with folks who wouldn't mind being in the library with me, to hold me accountable. And so I don't mind sharing that piece of my college experience because it really shows that you can make mistakes, you can slip up, and you can bounce back, if you are focused enough and if you are driven enough to do so.
Okay, so what does the bounce back look like? So you go from academic probation, write a letter of appeal, you
Mhm.
change your habits, and then what did the next semester look like? Did you come out with you getting all A's? What did that look like?
It was, I wouldn't say incremental growth, but it was not an overnight change. I can tell you that because you don't learn how to study overnight. I had to learn that you study based on the instructor or the professor. Not everyone teaches the same, and not everyone's going to test on the same content. So some of my professors would test solely on their lectures. Some would test on their PowerPoint slides. Some would test from the text in the book, right? And we all know how expensive those college, textbooks can be. And so for me, it was a learning curve, understanding my professor, their instruction style, and the best way to prepare, within the class. And then also raising my hand, because you mentioned tutoring, right? Raising my hand and not being ashamed to admit when I need help, you know. And I think that really helped me to lean into like a village. It really does take a village. And not only to raise my hand for senior folks to help me, but for my peers. If there are peers that I see get it, I can't be so prideful that I'm not going to acknowledge that, hey, you seem to be performing very well in this class. Do you mind? If we get together after class or, whatever time is best for you so that, I can, gain a little bit more understanding. And so that's exactly what I did. I was able to seek out those individuals that I knew were doing well and build rapport and get the help that I needed. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So I spoke to you about the tutoring part.
Mm-hmm.
We also, specialize in mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
Who were your mentors?
So in college, I believe I had a number of indirect mentors, those that left impressions on me. And then I did have a couple of official mentors. So I was actually in what was called the corporate mentor program, which is still alive and well at the University of South Florida. And it was a program that was specifically catered to first generation students. And I was paired with a mentor within, the financial services industry. And at the time, I'm gonna be completely transparent. They were both older white men, and they would, give me financial newspapers to read and stuff like that. And it was a nice experience. It was great exposure, but I can't say that I was able to feel a true connection at that time. And I couldn't say that the interactions that we had necessarily resonated with me or felt like something that I could achieve. Um, and so I think that's why whenever I do have an opportunity to share my story or speak to mentees, I'm very transparent about what I've gone through and what I experienced, because I want them to know that they're not the only ones, right? You may feel isolated in that moment, but you have no idea there are so many people in good company with you who have been through this exact thing, or maybe even something worse. And so I find that it's helpful to remain approachable and relatable, even in those mentorship relationships.
Okay. So when you are mentoring now,
Mhm.
do you seek out young women as far as being their mentor, or does it matter to you?
I am an open opportunity mentor. Like anybody who reaches out to me, I'm not going to turn them away. I will say that I am drawn to first generation because I understand that you're literally navigating, this new environment with no reference points whatsoever. And I just know how much more beneficial it would have been for me to have a mentor who could relate and who could help, give me some pointers along the way, even a lot earlier on in college. I try to be that to my mentees. And so I have been fortunate to have mentees, literally, young men, young women, all different ethnicities. And so at the end of the day, I'm not going to turn away someone who's raising their hand, who's shooting their shot and just wants guidance.
Okay. So I remember in my life, this is a few years ago, I said to my mother, how come you never taught us about finances, about money,
Yeah.
balancing checkbooks and stuff? And she said, she she laughed. She said, baby, I didn't tell you because I didn't know. Right.
Yeah.
So now that being said, when
Hmm.
you say first generation
Hmm.
college graduate,
Hmm.
does that mean you didn't have conversations with your mother about going to college, being in college? Did y'all ever talk about the college experience?
Not really, not until it came down to like preparing logistically for it. We
Mm.
didn't, because my parents were high school graduates and they did pretty well for themselves, working their way up through the restaurant management, right?
Mhm.
So they did all right. And so as long as we graduated high school and we stayed out of trouble, um, I guess that was their reference points that we could make a good living, kind of just working our way up in whatever we chose to pursue. And so what I aspired to was just kind of like the icing on the cake. And because she knew that I was a high performer, she kind of was not concerned about how I would manage to do it. It's kind of weird to think about in hindsight, but I mean, she knew that whatever I put my mind to, I was going to figure it out because I had demonstrated it so many, different times, all throughout from elementary, middle school, and high school. Mhm.
Okay. So earlier in our conversation, I asked you about going to public school. I asked you about your college experience, and you used a word, uneventful, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So you used it a couple of times. Sounds like you made all the right choices. You're living your best life. Do you have anything that you would describe in your life as eventful?
Um, I would say I've definitely had humbling moments that have made me, you know, um, kind of like take inventory and determine what's really important. So in high school, I had my first love. Some would call it puppy love, but for me, it was like the real deal. So my first ever boyfriend, when I was 16. And then we broke up. I think we broke up actually around Christmas of my senior year. And so I was sick. And I was already kind of like a skinny girl. And so if you could imagine, I was low key depressed about this boy and I was like losing weight. And I remember like folks kind of being concerned, and my mom at the time, we're best friends now, but at the time, like my mom couldn't really relate. You don't understand. So she would reach out to an older cousin that I was close with and be like, you know, can you talk to her? Because, you know, she's really going through it. And I remember my older cousin, we are so close. I remember to this day, she was like, you know, she spoke to me and I know it was an encouraging conversation, but the one thing that stuck with me was just don't be pathetic. because because I was telling her that, oh, we still have classes together. I have to see him. I still have this bear that he gave me. I think I'm just going to take it to school. And she was just like, nay, which is what a lot of my family calls me. Just don't be pathetic. And so I was just like, okay. And literally, for whatever reason, it's so interesting, the things that stick with you. That has stuck with me all throughout my life, like, especially when it comes to relationships, like, have some dignity. You know what I mean? Like, I know it hurts, but you better laugh until, you know, you laugh until, you know, it's real, essentially, even though you feel like crying on the inside. And so I had to fake it until I made it in that moment. And I remember, because I grew up in the church too. And by the time I got in high school, you know, I had drifted away from my church teachings, but it was still my foundation. And so I remember writing a prayer, you know, to asking the Lord to help me through this. And I would read it every morning. And my mom still has it to this day. And so that really helped me, just having, I think that was the first time that my faith became real for me. And my faith, I would say, is what has kept me through any ups and downs that I've experienced since then. Just knowing and having that reference point that I could believe and that I could overcome and that I could have hope. So, yeah.
You know, it makes me laugh when I do these interviews. First of all, the dynamic of these interviews. I'm the so-called celebrity, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm interviewing the civilian, the so-called civilian, the person who, when we reach out and say, hey, would you join us in this podcast? A lot of you, and I'm throwing you in the category, start saying, podcast, why me? Why do you want to interview me? What do you want to talk about with me? Right. Right. So I'm recognizing a pattern. I asked the question in the beginning. You answer the question. It was uneventful. And then when I keep digging, other things come up. Yeah. So like you'll casually say, oh yeah, you know, my heart was broken and I got this advice. I got this advice. Don't be pathetic. That might be the lowest common denominator, greatest advice someone could ever give you, right? And then you throw in, you know, just casually, oh, and I grew up in the church, right? Mm-hmm. So now we getting some stuff, right? Now, that being said, you reminded me, it triggered this question. So did you have any special hobbies? What did you like to do for fun other than read in the corner?
Man, I wouldn't say that I necessarily had any special hobbies. Reading literally was my favorite pastime, all throughout my school years, pretty much until I got to college. And then I, you know, started having more of a social life, but to the point where in high school, they used to call me bookworm, because I would read in the lunchroom. Like I would sit with the cool kids, but I would have like my Harry Potter book too. And so I actually also played basketball in middle school, but I was trash. Like I had no handles. I had no shot. I played good defense though. And so I played sixth grade, and then sixth grade through eighth grade. And then I got to my high school. I played JV in ninth grade until people like really started asking, like, how many minutes did you play? How many points did you score? And then I was just like, I don't want to have to keep answering these questions. And so I'm actually just going to back away from this activity. And so yeah, that was the end of my basketball career. But yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, basketball, reading, that's pretty much it.
And you mentioned you're a dance mom.
Yes.
What if you didn't dance, you said you played basketball, so you tried out for basketball teams, you made the teams, you wore uniforms.
Yep.
Okay. Now you get your own little one. I'm gonna put you in dance. What was that? Where'd that come from?
Probably just trying to live my like young life through her, maybe. We didn't have money for extracurricular activities, right? So, that's why the school extracurricular activities were the ones that I engaged in, because those were free for the most part. And so with my daughter, I just wanted to expose her to like different things. And there's one particular program in the Tampa Bay area that's pretty good. And so it was one that she could start, but as early as 3 years old. And so we put her right on in there. And I think we did allow her to do like soccer at her VPK program, but it just didn't seem like something she was really interested in. So we did dance, and she's been doing dance ever since. So yeah, she's in ballet. And I also have a bonus son who's 12 years old. So my daughter's 8, and then my bonus son is 12, and he's a basketball head. So between basketball and Fortnite, like, he's good. So
Okay. So you kind of answered this question, but you were saying it sort of facetiously with the don't be pathetic advice. So what I ask everyone is, what is the best advice you've ever received? So for you, I'm going to say, aside from don't be pathetic,
yeah.
which is up there with the greatest advice ever. But aside from that, what's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice / guidance that I've ever received would have to come from my mom, who has always reminded me that my name will go farther than I ever will. And so to be mindful about how I treat other people, because, my name is going to be in rooms that I may never step foot in, right? And so, let your character kind of speak for itself.
Okay. And then this is another staple question that I ask everybody, all our guests. What's the best advice you can offer to a young person, or your younger self, or your kids?
Sure. So my best advice is to begin serving early, right? I think when I think about things that really give me joy and a sense of purpose, it is surrounded around serving others, community outreach, and volunteerism. But that was not something that resonated with me when I was younger. I would only participate typically out of obligation. You got like a required amount of volunteer hours that you need to graduate high school, things like that. But I think in my first career outside of college, we worked for an institution, a banking institution, that had what was called Community Reinvestment Act requirements. So we had to serve, typically low and moderate income communities, and just seeing those students in what are considered Title IX schools, and just being able to be a professional that looks like them, reading to them, and hopefully giving them a reference point that you can do this too, really, I would say, was a rewarding experience. And that's kind of what sparked my desire to serve, even outside of requirements, just serve, for myself. And that's something that I would say I'm grooming my daughter to do whenever I can include her in volunteer opportunities. And it also gives you an opportunity to develop skills, be exposed to individuals. You just never know where it can lead. but it's something that you can do with no ulterior motive that will always give, it will always pay itself back, I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful answer. So my final question for you. And first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your time. But my final question is, we've talked for 43 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And time flies. Time really flies, because I could go longer with you, but I know your time is limited. But my final question is, you've told me where you were born, public school, certain things were uneventful, how you felt, how your husband sounds like the coolest, most charming guy in the world.
He is.
Loving mom,
Mhm.
successful career woman, uneventful, but yet had your heart broken as a teenager and grew up in the church. And you told me so many things. Is there anything we left out? Anything that we didn't touch on that you would like to share with us?
I don't know if there's anything that has been left out. But what I would say for those that are listening and are looking to gain insight into, how you can be quote unquote successful in the corporate environment, I would say that the biggest thing is to define your own success. Define your own, idea of what success means to you. Don't let it be defined by others. Don't get caught up comparing yourself to others. Run your own race, right? Because things will happen, when the time is right. So long as you are doing and engaging with intention, things will occur, in alignment. There have been opportunities that I thought, would be perfect for me that I went for and I didn't get. But one thing my mother always reminded me is what's meant for you won't pass you by. And so, and she was right, and so it may not have happened on my time, but it happened at the right time. And so, absolutely, I would just encourage folks to be mindful of how you're defining success and to let things unfold as they're meant to.
Okay, great. So, just a FYI, you gave me this time, and I really appreciate it. Right. So I'm going to let you know that when we started the conversation, and you told me you were from Florida, right? You could have derailed the whole interview just telling me you were from Florida, right? Because people from Florida, again, Florida is so beautiful, right? I used to go to Miami to visit my family as a kid. I've been to Key West at the end of the tip of Florida. I've been to Tampa, and I've been to Orlando, to the parks, but it's just a beautiful place. And somewhere along the line, Florida went crazy, right? Florida went crazy. Like I don't remember. I didn't even know Florida as having the potential to be loco when I was a kid. Enjoying the sun and enjoying the scenery and enjoying the weather. But somewhere along the line, it pivoted and went loco. Now, I don't know if I sound like I'm judging, because I mean loco in like a, what just happened, right? So you could have derailed the whole interview, and if I didn't know it up front that you were limited on time, I would have added 20 minutes to take you down a 20-minute journey. Maybe you could explain to me what happened to Florida, right?
It's complicated.
Yes. But I didn't take you down that road. I resisted the urge to go down that road and just, focus on you. But I thank you. I thank you so much. It was painless, right? There wasn't bad,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't
No.
painless. Yeah. So it was pretty painless as far as the interview. And I thank you so much for sharing. And you have such a beautiful story. You said you felt underdressed when you got on the call, but you look stunning.
Thank you.
Your life is stunning. Your journey, your sharing. I feel the energy through the phone, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for, really kind of setting the energy, right? There's a comfort level that I have that I think definitely attributed to the success of our dialogue. So I really appreciate what you're bringing to these interviews as well.